Well, good morning. This is the Lew Rockwell Show, and it's so great to have as our guest today, Connor Boyack. Connor's president of the Libertas Institute in Utah, which is a free market think tank. He's also president of the Association for Teaching Kids Economics, which concentrates on children in K through 8. He's a successful public speaker, author of 15 books. But today we're going to talk to him about the 9 books he's written about the Tuttle Twins and their adventures. Starting with and these books are always based on significant intellectual works that would be above the level of children. And Connor, in his writing and with the illustrations of his illustrator Elijah Stanfield, brings these to. I must say these are a blessing to any homeschooler, and Connor's a homeschooling dad, so he knows. And I would say you don't have to be a homeschooler to want these for your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, your next-door neighbors, anybody that you think is interested in knowing something about economics, about politics, from a libertarian standpoint. And Connor, tell us, and these books are just tremendous. The illustrations, it's full of illustrations. Everything is written perfectly for kids 5 to 10, although I noticed you say that, I think you told Jeff Deist, that older kids in the family tend to get interested in these books too, and they're influenced as well. So it's all of us who are afraid of, I must say, the school system and what they're doing to children. This is a tremendous antidote. It's not an antidote to everything they do, but it's an antidote to some of the most important evil things they do. And how'd you get started at this?
So running the Libertas Institute, which is a think tank, a state-based think tank, where we're actually more of a do tank. We come up with a lot of ideas, write a lot of articles and commentary to educate people about the principles of liberty as they pertain to kind of state and local issues in our state. But we're more of a do tank. We will go up and advocate for these things. We'll go lobby. We'll go get laws changed, and we've changed many laws.
Wow.
Most recently, we actually just got medical marijuana legalized after a 5-year campaign here in conservative Utah, which nobody thought possible. So we do a lot of stuff. And I would come home to my 2 young children, and they would wonder, or they would ask me, Dad, what do you do all day? And I began to think, like, how do you talk to a 6-year-old about property rights, right? How do you help a 7-year-old understand sound money? How do you talk to a 9-year-old about protectionism? And I began to realize that I wasn't the only one with these questions. And I went on Amazon looking for books, as a parent is, often would do, to find books that would help me relate these ideas to my children. Couldn't find anything. There was really just a dearth of anything talking to this younger audience. And I realized that there was kind of a market opportunity talking with Elijah, our illustrator, also a dad of young children. And for us, it was just an experiment. It's like, hey, let's do a book. Let's see what the response is. And the response was overwhelmingly. I will say first, the response was obviously best among libertarians who wanted, they had read The Law by Bastiat, of course, or iPencil, and they wanted their children or their grandchildren to understand those ideas as well. But as you noted in the interview I did with Jeff, what we found is not only the older kids, but in many cases, the parents who have never heard of Mises or Hayek or Rothbard. They never would have picked up any of these books, probably never would have come to, LewRockwell.com or to Mises.org or any of these websites. But now that they heard from a fellow mom in their, soccer group or church group or whatever, that these books teach important values to your kids. And that's all they hear. That's all they know. Suddenly they find themselves buying the books, compelled by the message. They don't want their children to miss out, right? Parents really want well-rounded children. And so we can use that to our advantage to say, the schools are teaching this stuff. Your kids aren't going to get this anywhere else. This is going to help your kids develop critical thinking skills and understand the world around them. And every parent, not every, I'm being overly generous, but many parents will say, yes, please. And what we find then is that when the books make their way into the home, yes, we're educating the children, but we get so many parents who reach out and say, my word, I learned more reading those books than I can ever remember reading in high school or college. And relevant content, not just learning, memorizing, and so forth, but valuable information that helps them understand the world. And so we like this project because it's helping us reach an entirely new audience, bringing people into the understanding of these principles that otherwise we may have totally missed.
And you're selling a lot of books. In fact, I heard that on Black Friday you had a very big sale.
Yeah, I think we just passed 350,000 copies sold to date.
Wow.
Black Friday I think it tripled our expectations. The word's kind of getting out there, and we're very excited because again we kind of went through the libertarian market very quickly. I need to correct myself there. I was actually at the Mises Institute a couple months ago, and Jeff had invited me to come and talk about the books and said, raise of hands, how many people have heard about these books? And easily a third of the room raised their hands. They were not familiar with the Tuttle Twins. And here I was thinking that I've reached every libertarian in our small little ecosystem. There's clearly room for opportunity.
It's tremendous. And by the way, if people are interested, they write to TuttleTwins.com.
Yes.
Or go to Amazon or...
They're on Amazon as well. Yeah, if you go to TuttleTwins.com, we sell kind of the whole set together at a discount. You get a bunch of workbooks for free and so forth. And so TuttleTwins.com is probably the best place to check them out.
So tell us about this book. This is The Tuttle Twins and the Fate of the Future, based on Murray Rothbard's magnificent monograph on the anatomy of the state. I mean, how do you teach what the state is to little children?
Yeah, this was admittedly a tough one. Of all of our books, this one is the one that pushes the furthest. Some of the books are a little more tame. We did one based on A Foreign Policy of Freedom by Ron Paul, and of course, all about the non-aggression principle. And we turned it into kind of learning about the golden rule and not aggressing against other people in this kind of summer camp. And the story lent itself very well with kind of hostile cabin mates fighting against one another. So some of the books and the topics lend themselves really well to just through storytelling, share these ideas in a way where you're not sitting down and telling a child, let me tell you the definition of the state, and you're having to explain it from a definitional standpoint or a textbook kind of format. Instead, through storytelling, the children can kind of see a little bit how these things are experienced and their nature. And so for this book, we have a long list of, as you point out, there are many great works that these authors we admire have written over the decades and even centuries. And so we have a long list to draw from of famed, books and essays that we all love and cherish and have benefited from. Anatomy of the State was a very important one for me several years ago, in finally turning from a libertarian to, as I call myself, a voluntarist, and understanding the true nature of the state. And I really wanted to find a way to do it. And this one was tough. This is a very potent topic. This kind of upends everyone's conception of what so-called government is. And so we had to spend a little while kind of toying with ideas for a story. How do we convey this content? And this book was also fun for us because what we've done throughout the series is talk about concepts like central planning and socialism and redistribution and plunder and all of these issues that are raised in different books. And at the end of the day, those are all kind of outgrowths or extensions of the state. And so this issue really connects all of the other books that we've talked about. And so in this book, we were able to kind of incorporate references from all the other books and say, oh yeah, it's just like you learned about in the Golden Rule and the non-aggression principle, or oh, it's just like you learned about in the Miraculous Pencil story about spontaneous order. And so all of these things kind of were woven into this story, which helps, I think, the children understand this is the big issue. This is the big problem. There's all these little problems and issues and so forth, but this is like the really big, beefy one. And so we kind of came up with a story that we could use that we thought resonated. We have a few like guinea pig readers, including my own children, and we found something that worked, and so we ran with it.
Well, it's a tremendous story, and it's just as thrilling to see Rothbard for little people. What's the next book you're going to do?
I like to think that if Murray could see this, that he would have given the project his blessing in finding ways to talk about these ideas to younger people.
Yes, he sure would have. Yes.
We did the most one of our recent books on entrepreneurship by Dr. Israel Kirzner. And so talking to him about it, when I asked Ron Paul, told him we'd like to do the Foreign Policy of Freedom. And it's just great to be able to extend the legacy and the reach of these people to not only younger audiences, but as I point out, broader audiences with, even adults who through their children can learn. So it's a project now we take very seriously, recognizing the opportunity and the compelling need. And so to your question about how we identify new books, we have a list of, I don't know, 30 or 40 that are sitting on our queue, if you will. And all along, we had planned to do 8 to 10 books. This was, as you point out, was number 9. And now, as we're to this point, I sent out a survey to our list of customers, about 50,000 families or so. And I said, all right, we got a decision to make here, right? Do we stop at 8 to 10 like I've always said we would, or would you prefer to see this keep going? 74% said, I think I titled the response that they could check it was, "Are you kidding me? Keep going." And 74% check that. So at this point, we're just going to keep the series going. There's a lot of material to draw from. And part of our decision is, obviously, what issue have we not yet covered that fits kind of within the whole realm of the series? And sometimes it's some other thing comes up. I had actually not anticipated doing Anatomy of the State this early, but we kind of just felt like doing it suddenly and reprioritized. Also, for my 10th book, I was also always thinking of doing Human Action by Mises, which is going to be a doozy to figure out how to turn into a story. But the late John Taylor Gatto just passed away a few weeks ago, a couple months ago. Big inspiration for my family and the educational choices that we've made. And we've always had in our mind to do a book based off of his The Underground History of American Education.
Oh, wow. It's great book.
Yeah, a very insightful book. And so his passing, he wrote the foreword to one of my books for parents called Passion Driven Education a couple of years ago. He also actually, and I feel very almost sacred or very honored by this, the last thing that he wrote before he passed away was a chapter for a book that I will be publishing this spring. It's with a variety of authors, folks from Fee and Praxis and others, all about skipping college and helping teenagers understand the opportunities out there and the problems of higher education. So John wrote a chapter for that book that isn't yet published, and will kind of extend his legacy a bit as well. So we've reprioritized because of current events, if you will, and his passing. And so I've actually not announced this anywhere else, Lew, so I'll do it for the first time here on your show. My intention and plan is to, for our 10th book, do one based off of John Taylor Gatto's book.
Well, it's a great book. I must say it's an unrecognized great book, but so that the more that people can get to know about it, the better. And it really is I would say unanswerable, but it's so fascinating and well written. And he was a very great man and a great teacher. By the way, do you ever hear from any of your students? Do the kids write you? Do you have kids in the audience and when you speak who talk to you about the books they've read, what influenced them, what they liked, and so forth?
I very much do. So I go around speaking in schools. We provide books for free to classrooms, and I get emails from using their parents' email account mostly, but it's like, hey, this is, Julie, age 9, and I wanted to let you know. I get social media has been great because we get tagged all the time from our little readers who are filling out the workbooks or coloring pages of the creature from Jekyll Island and this big monster, that they're then drawing that's changing prices everywhere. And then obviously for the older kids, we hear a lot of parents who are like, hey, this was really cool. With my teenagers, actually, we're sitting down and reading the original book, because at the end of our books, we say, hey, parents especially, but if you like this material, if you want to learn more, go read the original work upon which it's based, so that they can deepen their understanding of that topic. And so we find that a number of these older kids are extending that learning. The fun thing for me is, I've written, about 15 books, 9 of which are for this Tuttle Twins series. And ever since the Tuttle Twins project really took off a couple of years ago, I'll be at the public events and so forth, and a parent will kind of come up with their child, and in fact, Jeff did this when I was at the Mises Institute a couple months ago, and it's like, hey, here's my kids. They really wanted to meet you and get a book signed, and it's just it's fun to see kids being exposed to this type of content. Like, this has never really been done before, and I think what we've validated with this project and seeing the demand and the sales and everything is that there is a way to talk to younger kids at a more simplistic level, admittedly,
but they get it and they want to learn about it. And I will tell you this, Lew, the comment we get more than any others from this series from parents is a comment such as, my kid doesn't really like to read. He plays video games all the time or whatever. He's just not a reader. He really resists books. And yet the Tuttle Twins, he devours. And we get that over and over and over again. And Elijah, the illustrator, and I, as we've talked about it over the years, trying to pinpoint why is that? Like, what have we stumbled into here? And what is it that's resonating so well? And I think our theory, Elijah and I, is that it's that we're willing to challenge kids. Kids want to be treated like adults. They want to be the big boy, the big girl. And when we talk to them about serious topics in these books, rather than like, hey, Julie and Amy had a fight on the playground and then they kissed and made up, we're not just doing dumb stories about nothing. We're talking about serious issues. And I think kids, when we respect them and when we show them that they can tackle these bigger issues, they respond very well to it. And all the better that the big issues they're tackling are very liberty-oriented issues that we are now exposing a whole new audience to.
Well, Connor Boyack, God bless you for what you're doing. And I think your success is indicative of how important the work you're doing is. And I want to urge everybody to write TuttleTwins.com. If you've got kids in your house, if you have kids in your family, there's again, kids next door, kids at the local school who would like to learn about the important principles of life, or at least many of the important principles of life, get these books. There have been 9 of them. Connor, thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for all you're doing. And it's exhilarating. It really is great news. It's the good news. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lew. I appreciate you having me on.
Bye-bye. Well, thanks so much for listening to the Lew Rockwell Show today. Take a look at all the podcasts. There have been hundreds of them. There's a link on the LRC front page. Thank you.